I am L.A. Marzulli. I write books, I make films, I yak a lot. And this is going to be a presentation. What do giants, UFOs, elongated skulls, and earthworks have in common? Folks, they have everything in common. And our mission statement is this: to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and to herald the return of the King Jesus. And that's what we do. And all those four things I just talked about, giants, UFOs, elongated skulls, the mounds all over the United States, they're all the fingerprints, in my opinion, of the dark side. Fingerprints of the dragon. And so we're pushing back. I mean, a few people have sort of delved into it, but we're like, I'm gonna date myself here, we're full tilt boogie on this. Completely into it. So we've exposed the deception of the prince of the power of the air, and that's what we'll do here tonight, but we're also heralding the return of the King Jesus, because I believe that we're in a window of time unlike any other. I'm gonna put this down because it's annoying me, thank you. But I really do. I think we're in a window of time unlike any other before. Events are accelerating. Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Now, that's not a feel-good statement. That's not a statement that makes me just, want to snuggle up in a blanket and have a cup of hot cocoa or a coffee, and it doesn't make me want to do that. It makes me kind of go, whoa, what the heck is that? Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. So something is coming. Something is, in fact, as you'll see in a minute, is already here. Something has already been revealed, and the church has this morbid propensity towards ambivalence when it comes to the whole UFO phenomena. It's like, we don't care. Well, that's okay, but we're just gonna talk about Jesus. Okay, I get that. In the meantime, all this stuff is coming down. As Paul talks about leaving the fundamentals. We don't need the fundamentals. Those of us who are saved and born again and spirit-filled, we don't need the fundamentals of that. We know what that is. We know what salvation is. Now let's find out what's going on in the war, because we are at war. This war is raging all around us. This is the territory of the prince of the power of the air, i.e. dragon. That's who owns this planet. Even though the Lord has the title deed, I get it. But we're in a war. We can see it all around us. Lawlessness reigns wherever we go. Lawlessness is everywhere. It's unbelievable. So I want to get right into it. So this is the UFO update. And the reason why I have to depart from the Mound thing is because if I don't arm you with this, I'm not doing my job. And what's happening, this is Tucker Carlson. This is 2017. This is with Commander Fravor.
UFOs have been the stuff of conspiracy theorists for decades, often mocked for talking about it, but maybe they shouldn't be mocked.
So this is 2017 with Tucker Carlson. This is when, December 2017, I saw this and I fell out of my chair. Asked my wife, literally. I went, oh my gosh, that's disclosure. Because you'll see when Commander Fravor comes on, he's talking about the UFO phenomenon. And it's a triptych. You got Tucker Carlson here, you got David Fravor here, and then you got the UFO. I'm gonna move a little bit because of time. I'm just gonna scroll over. There's Fravor, and there's the tic-tac shaped UFO. And I just blew it. Okay, here we go.
We get out to the spot where they tell us it's at. We start looking around, and both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. So as we drive around in a clockwise flow, we get to about the 9 o'clock position, and I said, well, I'm gonna go down and check it out, and the other jet is gonna stay high. So as we go down, and when we get to the 12 o'clock position, it starts to mirror us. So it's in a clockwise flow, and it's on the opposite side of the circle from us. And we continue this. It's in a climb, we're in a descent. We're getting a great look at it. This whole thing takes about probably up to 5 minutes from the time we show up. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm gonna go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me. And I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
Rapidly accelerates 2 seconds and disappears. Who is this guy? Who's Commander Fravor? How does he get on Fox News? How do they get classified footage of a UFO? Because it is classified footage of a UFO, and now it's on national TV. It's not on George Norrie Coast to Coast, where I frequently or go there frequently. How is it that it gets on there? Who picks up the phone and calls the producers at Fox News and goes, hey, we got this guy on, we want to get him on next Tuesday, how does that sound? Nobody knows who Commander Fravor is. He doesn't have a book, he doesn't have a DVD, he's on a lecture circuit. Essentially, before this, he was an unknown. But now, he's a household word, Commander David Fravor, F-18 pilot. Watch what he says here when Tucker asks him, in your opinion, what do you think this is?
I wanted to fly it.
Yeah,
but,
I bet.
there's, talking to some physicists, they don't think the human body could handle that kind of force with that acceleration.
It doesn't sound like the human body could. So bottom line, what do you think this was?
Here we go.
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight, that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world. When we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world. When we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
Okay, that's disclosure. You're laughing, but that's disclosure. Something not from this world on Tucker Carlson, Fox News. It's not George Noory Coast to Coast. And you would think that my phone would blow up. You would think that pastors would begin to talk about this, because this is the coming great deception. This is what it is. And the springboard, I have a whole presentation, which I don't have time to get into because we're talking about the mound builders. But I'm trying to warn you, us, of what's here already. This is 2017. The next one, and there's a series of people about every 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes more frequently, on Tucker Carlson. That seems to be the gate. He's had a whole bunch of people like Nick Pope, for instance, who used to be part of this whole UFO investigation thing. So Pope is there. Other people have been on Tucker Carlson, all revealing the reality of a so-called extraterrestrial presence. Every Friday, Ancient Aliens holds court. Your kids guaranteed, know more about the ancient alien paradigm than they do about the paradigm of the Bible. Where are all the under 30-year-olds in this audience? If the Lord tarries in another 15 years, there won't be a prophecy conference. Think about it. We failed them because they don't know what the gospel is, and they don't understand the severity of the times that we live in, the unprecedented times that we live in, unlike any other time in history. Men run to and fro over the face of the earth, and knowledge increases, just like the prophet Daniel writes, 2,500 years ago? In the latter days, knowledge will increase, and men will run to and fro over the face of the earth. And that's exactly what we see happening. Exactly what we see happening. So here's the second. Watch this. This is Commander Luis Elizondo. So the first rung on the disclosure ladder is Commander David Fravor saying that whatever this was not of this world. Okay, got that? So what the heck was it? The second rung of a disclosure ladder happened this year. And I called Gary Stearman. We both chatted for about an hour, because it was unbelievable. This is Luis Elizondo. Again, I'll skip through it. Basically, at the very end of the interview, Tucker Carlson asked Mr. Elizondo, in your opinion, does the United States government have debris from crashed UFOs? He looks right at the camera and he says, yes. He asks it again, as you'll see. And then he kind of hems it off, well, I don't want to give my non-disclosure agreement away, but the short answer to that is yes. So he's giving it away. I mean, you can't do that. Watch this. May 31st, 2019.
Well, for many, many decades, the U.S. government has dismissed out-of-hand UFO sightings as crank stuff, things that lunatics babble about. Now, suddenly they're taking a different approach. They are telling the truth. They're finally admitting that UFO sightings are, in fact, routine, and the government is now being systematic in investigating the question of UFOs. A new History Channel documentary called Unidentified will explore the military's many recent encounters with unidentified aircraft.
The object the Navy pilot
So that's Elizondo. I want to go to the end for time.
Of that being the case, that these are Russian or Chinese.
Boy. Tucker, you don't want me to give my opinion. The one thing
So once again, we have a triptych. We have Tucker Carlson. We have Luis Elizondo. We've got pictures of real UFOs. So I'm going to skip down here to the second rung. And this is when Tucker Carlson asked Elizondo about the debris.
5 or a F-22, we can tell you even what airline it is and the difference between the models of aircraft within that type of aircraft. So I think it's highly unlikely that a foreign adversary was successful in developing something like this.
So let me ask you one last question. Do you believe, based on your decade of serving in the U.S. government on this question, that the U.S. government has in its possession any material from one of these aircrafts?
I do, yes.
You think the U.S. government has debris from a UFO in its possession right now?
Unfortunately, Tucker, I really have to be careful of my NDA. I really can't go into a lot of more detail in that.
Okay.
But simply put, yes.
So the bottom, yeah, it's a totally staged question, because if you have a non-disclosure agreement, the answer to that is, I cannot confirm or deny that question, and you move on. I can't answer that, I'm sorry. That's what you do. You don't do this little tap dance and go, well, the short answer to that is yes. We just blew your NDA out of the water. That's the second rung of a disclosure ladder. Folks, you got to understand something, that the great deception is upon us, and the springboard to it is a Darwinian theory that somehow we just all magically evolved out of primordial slime billions of years ago. So that is the paradigm in which people, the scientific community and academic community run. They run on Darwin. That's the whole deal. So this fits right in with the Darwinian paradigm, because the neo-Darwinists, the new Darwinists, are looking out there because they realize the complexity of the deoxyribonucleic acid, the double helix spiral of life, which is the building blocks of all life on this planet and probably everywhere else, couldn't have just sprung into existence. So they know that. So they're looking out there for our creators. And this is where it's going. And you need to be armed. Seriously, seriously. The second rung of a disclosure ladder has been breached. They're at the gates, sire, but they are. They're at the gates. And we don't know what the third rung is going to be, but it is coming. Absolutely, it is coming. So watch this one. This is Elizondo once again on Tucker Carlson last Friday. Watch what he says. And again, I'll skip forward.
Just a few weeks ago, the Navy admitted for the first time that several UFO videos were real, meaning they show actual area phenomenon that so far the Pentagon cannot explain. Now a UFO investigations group says they have found materials that could potentially be physical evidence of UFOs. Luis Elizondo is Director of Special Programs at the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. He also headed the Pentagon's Office for Investigating UFO Incidents, and it shed light on the question of what UFOs might be.
Sure. Well, our company over the last year and a half has actually obtained quite a bit of material. And let me first preface by saying some of that material, its provenance is frankly hearsay, while the provenance of some of this material has been substantiated. And ultimately, we're in the process of analyzing this material at 3 different levels. We're looking at its physical properties, its chemical, or if you will, molecular properties, and then ultimately its atomic properties. And it's really at that point we'll be able to make some sort of
Stop right there. So as he's talking, on the right side of the triptych, that cluster was North Carolina last week. 13, 14 UFOs that hovered over the water. So this is mainstream. This is Fox News. I keep saying it's not your story. There they are. And most of us sleep. The church dithers. The church won't talk about it. And yet I have people coming up to the table who have been going to churches all their lives and have had encounters, but they're too afraid to tell anybody, but they'll tell me. And the dirty little secret of the whole UFO thing must be exposed. And we need to be talking about this 24/7. And we need to be warning people what this is. This is, in my opinion, the coming great deception. When they show up, when not if, because it's already happening. When they really show up, when the mile-wide craft just goes bang like that and just sits in the sky, the entire planet goes like this and shifts. Everything shifts. Your world, my world, our world will be completely different. Everything will be referred to as before disclosure and after disclosure, Richard Dolan's book. But that's what's coming. Trust me, that's what is coming. They are rolling it out. I never thought I would see this like this, but we're seeing it. And I've been banging this drum for 30 years. 30 years I've been banging this drum. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Finally, it's here. And there's this ambivalence within the church. We need to wake up and understand that the source of this is not entities from Zeta Reticuli, there's something else. And they will claim that they're our progenitors, our creators. They'll state that we created all life on this planet. We genetically manipulated early man. We jump-started the world's civilizations. We started the world's religion, now at this critical juncture in human history, and we are sort of at a critical juncture. All we need is a nuke going off someplace, and it will create the greatest collective fear that mankind has ever known because we're all wired together. So if that happens, that's when I think they're going to show up. There's a saying that Gary and I bandied about, that we go up, they show up. We go up, they come down. And that's what I think is going to happen. The church gets raptured out of here, and that's the restrainer, perhaps, from keeping them manifesting. That's conjecture. We'll have to wait and see. But what's alarming about this is we're already seeing it. It's already beginning to manifest right in front of our noses. And yet most of us just sleep through it. Most of our pastors, God bless them, we need to pray for them. Go, they're under the gun. But they need to address this, and they need to address it soon. Not after the fact, but before the fact, a priori. Okay, even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Without standing up, I just want, at the count of 3, I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then you guys will say, I will not be deceived. Now, this presentation, the UFO presentation, is really like an hour and a half. And at the end of that, you get enough information to actually stand up and yell, I will not be deceived. But I've given you enough to start doing your own research. We've got tons of resources out there. I'm not going to hype them. They are what they are. But they're on the table. And other people here have resources. Arm yourself. Tell a friend. Try to get the young people interested, because they're already watching the Ancient Aliens thing. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and you guys are going to go, I will not be deceived. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I will not be deceived. Okay. And we believe that. This is from the Mysterious Mound Builders. This whole new series is called On the Trail of a Nephilim. And at 56 minutes, this will be really interesting. Mathematical Mysteries of the Mound Builders. 2 millennia ago, a culture that is still unknown to us today erected thousands of mounds throughout the Midwestern United States to the Gulf of Mexico. They're called the Hopo, the Adena, or the Mississippian. However, no one knows what these people actually call themselves. In other words, they remain mysterious and unknown to us today. When the first white settlers came into the Great Circle Mound in Ohio, they asked the Native Americans living there, who built this? The natives replied that they didn't know who built them, as these large mounds were there and abandoned when they arrived. Let me stop right there. I spent 2 days ago, I was in the presence of a wonderful First Nation person. He's a medicine man raised by the Lakota Sioux. And I asked him, I said, well, what about the mounds? He said, we didn't build them. Just like, I mean, there was no equivocation, no hesitation on his part. It was just, we didn't build them. Now, they may have helped on some of them, and the smaller ones, yeah, but stuff like we'll get into here, they didn't build them. The discovery of these mounds created a controversy, as some positive the mounds were built by an unknown lost tribe of people who migrated, perhaps, from the old world. Others thought they could be one of the lost tribes of Israel. The debate continued until the latter part of the 19th century, when the conclusion was made that Native Americans had built the mounds, but they had simply forgotten they had done so. It always gets a laugh. That's what you're taught if you want to become an archaeologist. That's the paradigm that they're under. This is now the accepted paradigm. However, is it the truth of what occurred in the ancient past, or has the information been managed to bolster a particular narrative? Join us as we explore the mysterious mound builders. Tick Island is in Florida. Every now and then, let me get a slurp here. Every now and then, I get stuff across my desk. And one day, a while back, I got this email, and the guy said that as a small boy, they went out to this island. It was a huge midden shell mound, but there were burials. It was like 5 acres and like 100 feet high. The thing was huge. So it's, a couple thousand years or whatever of piling all these shells, and there were burials there. And he said as a boy, they went out there, and his mother took pictures, which you see there, and also film. So I'm going like, well, what did you guys find? And the guy, the kid, who's now like basically my age, was stating that in one area of the island, there were 10-footers that they uncovered. I said, well, did you film it? He goes, we don't know. Mom didn't want to film the skeletons, so we didn't know. But he sends the film out. We take the film. We take it to a place in Hollywood. They digitize everything because it was like 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter, whatever it was. It was old and brittle. But they digitized it, and I went over frame by frame by frame by frame by frame. No pay dirt. There were no giant skeletons. However, there was an elongated skull that is actually in the film. And the archaeologist who came onto the site much, much later, is shown like this, kind of hamming it up in front of the camera, and then he takes a brush and he reaches back like this and brushes off the elongated skull. But this man went on the record, and it's in the film, his testimony on the phone is in the film, that when he was a boy, the femur bone, which is right here, this is my leg bone. So he's a kid about, you can see maybe 7 or 8 there. And that femur bone of that giant in the grave would come up above his waist. So that's a really big guy. So we know that they're there. We've got newspaper articles. We've got eyewitnesses that talked about the giants that they uncovered. We also have a Native American First Nation people who talk about fighting giants with red hair and 6 fingers. So we know it existed. Indian relic hunter, Bilsher family pastime, and of course this isn't what they saw. This is another photo from something else, but it gives us an idea. This is over 7 feet 2 inches, found in a mound, the Okefenokee Swamp. They're everywhere. Who is the prince of the power of the air? Who is the prince of the power of the air? Somebody, anybody. Okay, so most of us know. The dragon, Satan. It's one of his titles, the prince of the power of the air. So here we are, and I want you to cut the volume on this. I don't want the music playing. This is the Great Serpent Mound. And, let me try it again. Okay, so this is the Great Serpent Mound. It's near Peebles, Ohio. I've been there 3 times. By the way, when you're in an area like this, when you go to these places, you need to pray up before you get there, and you need to pray up afterwards. These are highly charged sites. In many cases, ritualistic stuff was done. So this drone here is about 300 feet up, and you can see the undulations of a serpent. And those undulations point to the equinoxes and the solstice. In the very front, you can see it right there. You have the head of the serpent, and in front of him is an egg. Genesis 3:15. The seed, the offspring of a serpent, will be at war, at enmity with the offspring, the seed of the woman. He, the coming Messiah, will crush your head, you will bruise his heel. This is Genesis 3:15 screaming at us. It's thousands of years old. The new signage at the site says the Shawnee built it. But as you'll see later, Chief Riverwind comes on and says the Shawnee didn't build this. This is a great injustice. In fact, the Shawnee go out of their way to say, no, we didn't build a serpent mound. So there's a narrative that's being promulgated, and we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? All these undulations that you see, the mouth, by the way, points to the summer solstice. This is incredible. And these are hunter-gatherers 3,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. The debate, some people put it older, some people put it younger. You know, archaeologists argue amongst themselves. You can see the waterway on the left-hand side, a good shot of the head. In the middle of the egg, there used to be an altar and also a pillar. We found the pillar, someone had pushed it over the cliff there, and it's now in the dirt. We're trying to convince them to let us raise the pillar and bring it back onto the site, and also see if there's handwriting or hieroglyphs or something, any type of a marking on the pillar. No one's ever done this. I mean, you gotta, but there was an altar there, and according to what we believe, there was human sacrifice done there. So that's just another shot of it. Summer solstice sunrise, equinox sunrise. Why go through the trouble of creating something like this? What's the point? And the people who are doing it can't see it anyway. When you're there, the mounds are about this high, and it undulates. And the serpent is, you can see the tail. I mean, you walk, and it's not some small little thing. It's like probably 4 times the size of this room. It's really big, at least 3 times the size of this room, lengthwise. So, you're walking along like this, and this thing is undulating, and they built a 2-story tower, and you can go up on top of that, and you still really can't see what it is until you're up in the air. And the moment we're up in the air, you go, oh my gosh, look at this. It's the largest serpent effigy on the planet, the Great Serpent Mound. Who built it and why? Who is the prince of the power of the air? How would you check your work? And how did these people know about the equinoxes and the solstices? The longest day, the shortest day, the days where they go out of their way. They are obsessed with lunar calendars. They're obsessed with advanced geometry, trigonometry. And it's all embedded in these mounds, as you'll see in just a little bit. Cahokia is the largest mound in the United States. It's probably upwards of 450,000 tons of earth that were moved, roughly. 450,000 tons of earth. So it begs the question, how was this done? And this is the essence of the case, in my opinion. You got all this dirt, you got a group of hunter-gatherers, they've got primitive tools. The plaza in front of Cahokia, according to the archaeologist that I spoke to, is dead level within 2 inches. So you got like a 20 or a 30-acre plaza, 30-acre plaza, and it's dead level to 2 inches, and they don't have transits. How was that done? See where I'm going with all this stuff? How do you move 450,000 tons of earth? And this is just one mound. This is just one mound. There's 10,000 mounds in Ohio. They're all over the place. Pick up a book by Squire and Davis. Thank God they were there. They were surveyors. They surveyed all this stuff. There's also the plateau on top. You can see it, a very level place. They believe, from what they've discovered, that there was a 10-foot stockade wall all around this mound. Why? Why was that done? The Mississippi is in the background. Highly charged place. It's right near St. Louis. And when you go there, it's like, well, they built it one basket full at a time. Oh, really? Really? That's you guys are right there. You start laughing. But that's what they believe. This is Poverty Point, the second largest mound in the United States, 390,000 tons of earth. So what we did, and you can see the advanced mathematics, the isosceles triangles, everything is laid out. It's deliberate. And you can't, it's one thing if I took a piece of paper like this and began to sketch it, but these are angles. So in order to use a protractor and a compass and a ruler, I have to know geometry. I just can't be guessing at angles. That's not the way things work. You've got to know what you're doing. And it's one thing to do it on a piece of paper like this. It's another thing to do it on a site that's like, 30, 40, 50 acres. The site of the Octagon Mount is 50 acres. 50 acres. How do you check your work if you're making an octagon? And you can't see what you're making unless you're in the air. But the archaeologists just brush it all away. The Native Americans built all this. That's the stock answer. And if you want tenure in a university, if you want to be in charge of one of these sites, you toe the party line. No one thinks, in my opinion. Let me check my time here. Golly, 46 minutes. I'm in trouble. So this is Fort Ancient. This Fort Ancient is the largest earthworks in the Americas, 3.5 miles, with 66 gates. And we're there, and I get out of the car, and it's wintertime. It's actually the spring equinox. And my wife Peggy's got this little thing on her cell phone which shows you the constellations. So these two mounds, which are one of the gates in this thing, and the mounds are probably 20 feet in diameter and probably about 10 feet tall, right next to each other, and of course a road goes right through the middle of it. Go figure. But the mounds are there, and she's like this because it's the equinox, okay? And the constellation Hydra, the serpent, comes right over the gate. That's deliberate. That's just not an accident. Here it is, the equinox, and the constellation, the serpent Hydra, comes up it's right over the gate, not right over the gate. Totally deliberate. Excuse me, who is the prince of the power of the air? This is the fingerprints of a supernatural we're looking at. It's all over the Americas. I call this Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. These are shots of what Fort Ancient used to look like. See how small the people are? See how big this mound is? 3.5 miles of that. How many people have ever dug just with a hand shovel? Okay, right? 3.5, and they insist. And you'll see how they say this is, you'll see it in a second. So watch this. We need some volume, please. And I'm going to skip to where the good part is here. So here they are.
Cherokee, you're a little bit Shawnee.
Shawnee tradition, Cherokee heritage.
This is Dosenchak.
I'm excited to kind of learn a little bit about my heritage, but I'm in a garden, so what's going on here?
So this garden depicts crops that were grown 2,000 and 1,000 years ago by the Hopewell cultural people. And they were very simple, complex horticultural.
Okay, I want to stop right here. He goes, these we call the Hopewell people. They have no idea what these people call themselves. Do you understand that? Hopewell is an English farmer. He discovers some artifacts. So they name all these artifacts after Hopewell. They have no idea who the people are, what they call themselves, or anything else, but they'll tell you all about it. Down to the nuance. Well, we call the Hopewell people. They have no idea. No idea how things are built. Because of time, I'm going to skip ahead to the fun part. So he's talking about the garden right here. This is where, watch her face.
And gourds.
Okay.
And we also have native tobacco that is growing. And when all this was built,
maybe give it more volume, please.
Simple tools, and I can hand this to you.
Yeah.
We have the shoulder blade, or excuse me, the clamshell hoe.
Watch her
Okay.
face.
Here.
Now, what's this used for?
This would be used for gardening, as well as.
I just love you guys always crack up because it's like she's going, come on now.
Creating 18,000 feet of earth walls here at Fort Ancient.
And that's sturdy enough to do something with.
They would have had a little bit more sturdier, but
They would have had more sturdy clams back then. What? I mean, it's like you're just making this stuff up. Drives me nuts.
gone through a lot of clamshells.
Okay.
And then also we have the deer shoulder blade. The way the deer shoulder blade had been inserted into the shaft and then wrapped with rawhide of that animal. Again, look how flimsy it is.
Yeah, I was
They
gonna
would
say.
go through a lot of bone tools, and a lot of shoulder blades of deer and elk and split elk antler.
What is here?
It's just beyond belief. So this is Jack again explaining to everybody what happens if you deconstruct the mounds at Fort Ancient. Watch.
So now, Fort Ancient, it's a 2,000-year-old prehistoric earthwork site. We're on the short list for World Heritage recognition right now, which means that we are going to be considered for a global destination.
Okay, I'm going to skip up to where the good part is, right here.
Walls built 2,000 years ago by people that we call the Hopewell cultural people. They would have used nothing more than the shoulder bones of deer and elk, split elk antler, clamshell, hoes, digging sticks. Placing the soil into baskets that we've demonstrated would have held no more than about 35 to 40 pounds of soil. Well, how do we know that?
So he goes, how do we know that? Because they found one, and this is what I want to know, because I've heard this repeated at all the sites. They use this example. We found one basket full of dirt. Well, you don't know when that basket full of dirt was put in there. How do you know it wasn't much later after the site was abandoned and it was used as a second interment? You don't know that. Where did it come from? See, so it's like, and I've heard this story repeated at all the different sites. So somebody's feeding them this information. So I'm going to skip a little bit further because he's talking about, 30 pounds of dirt. Now he's talking about the deconstruction of the mounds. We'll pick it up there.
Of soil. So to figure out volume, you take your tape measure, measure the length of the stain, the depth of the stain, give those measurements to somebody who got better than straight C's in high school general math. That was me, yeah. And it gives you volume. There is an estimated 553,000 cubic yards of soil at this site. Now, what's that mean to you guys? Absolutely nothing.
It's strategic.
And again, we are not a fort. We are a prehistoric church. But 553,000 cubic yards of soil. If we were to tear apart all of the earth walls, all 18,000 feet, and put them into dump trucks, each dump truck holding between 15 and 20 tons of soil, and park it at the Jeremiah Morrow Bridge on Interstate 71, which is about 1.5 miles away from here. Start parking the dump trucks end for end. You will end up 15 miles from downtown Cleveland, 200 miles away.
So you have 200 miles of dump trucks, end to end. 200 miles of dump trucks. Mainstream archaeology insists these mounds were created with primitive tools. So guess what we did? We had a guy who makes these things for museums. Cost me $350, and he made it. And then we hired a fit laborer who took this hoe, this primitive hoe, and went out near Poverty Point and dug. So we'll show you that in just a second.
We were curious to see how an ancient flint hoe would actually work in the soil around Poverty Point. We hired a flint maker to create a replica of the hoe, and after procuring a fit laborer, headed out into the field to see how much dirt could be dug, collected and hauled to the mound site.
My name is Rick Woodward. I'm an archaeologist.
I'm going to skip because of time. That's Rick Woodward. He's our team's archaeologist. So watch this part here when, I can't believe I just did that again.
To do that, to see how the mounds were built and the time factor that it would take. I wanted to describe this hoe a little bit, this handle, where it was pitch, and you can't see the pitch, but inside of these wrappings.
That's not slow motion.
There's a dark resin pitch that would have acted as a glue to hold this in.
So the guy's digging. Now he gathers it up.
And they would have been able
and this would have been a deer skin or a birch bark basket.
Very rugged instrument.
And then he goes across the field.
Let's take that soil that we've dug out of the hole, and we're going to put it into a vessel, and we're going to time that operation.
This is all in the film, by the way.
To see how much time it takes to do that. Once we get that done, we're going to take...
So I'm going to get to the punchline. So you can see that here he is. He gets the dirt. He gets the one basket. He goes trucking across the field to where the mound would be. Now he dumps it.
Would have been dumped.
I just love this. See, we haven't even done a compaction test on any of these mounds because the dirt was compacted, but how? And they timed the operation, and this is where the punchline is. So it's all that amount of time, and then we go here. Each truck and trailer holds 40 tons of soil. 71-man bucket trips to create 1 ton of soil. 390,000 tons of earth to create Poverty Point. 9,750 double tractor trailer loads of dirt to move that 390,000 tons. Basically 28 million one-man bucket loads of dirt to create the mound at Poverty Point. That's Miamisburg. There were over 10,000 mounds in Ohio alone. There's Fritz Zimmerman on the top of it. Seriously? Seriously. Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology, you tell me. Giant bones in the mounds. Science and earth relics of Indians who lived 700 years ago. Strange skeletons found. Giants in North America. This is my work on Catalina Island, which I used to look at constantly from not the house, but when I would be down on Pacific Coast Highway, I'd go by it and, hi, how you doing, Ralph? That's Ralph Glidden, who was hired by the Hay Museum. Hay Museum was later gobbled up by the Smithsonian Institute. Gary Stearman was the one that said, hey, LA, you can get that picture analyzed. So I analyzed it. I had 3 people look at the picture, that's the original, and analyze it. See the skeleton in front of that? So 3 people, 3 different people, no collusion between them, put that skeleton at just under 9 feet. We separate the man, we separate the skeleton, we put them down together, 8 foot 9 inches, we rounded it down for error, and we could have rounded it up to 8 foot 6. It gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We know Ralph Glidden, the little guy there, was 5 foot 8. We're positive of that. So that's what we're looking at. We have giants. We have 6-fingered skeletons. How many fingers do you see there? There's 6. What does the Bible tell us about 6-fingered giants that roam the land? This skeleton, based on that bowl, we estimate there was another 9-footer. Look at the size of a skull, look at the orbits, look at the size of the hand. That is a 6-fingered skeleton. Here's my picture published in the book, On the Trail of a Nephilim. We went back to the museum, the late Richard Shaw, a good friend, and I really miss him, and myself. You can see Rick's hands. He's holding my book up. Look at the picture in the book. You see the skeleton. And the museum wall, what's missing? Now, why would the museum do that? LA, these are scientists. They stand for truth, justice, and the American way. Really? So they cropped the picture. They cropped the picture to get rid of the giant skeleton. So we took pictures of that, and then that went viral. Because you got to get out ahead of it. You got to publish, and let people see what's going on. So the new museum has got the picture, my picture, blown up like this big, and it talks about Ralph Glidden, but guess what? Not a word about the giant. Not a word about how big the skeleton is. I was also on the Jim Vieira's show, In Search of the Lost Giants, and we talked about that also. Moving into the skulls now, because this is all, look folks, it's all connected. I'm looking for like a unified theory, and it's all cooked up, as Russ Dizdar would say, in Hell's Kitchen. Look at the normal skull on the far left. That's where the foramen magnum should be. You can examine the skulls on the table for yourself and see them. Look how the position of the foramen magnum in these 2 skulls, and one of them is here. It's genetic. I've got medical doctors coming in a new film that we're working on, the DNA film. All of them say the same thing. It's genetic. You can't cranial deform. You can't cradle headboard the infant and push the occipital plate. You can't do that back towards the foramen magnum, the brain hole. You can't do that. So it's done in utero. It's done in the womb. And it's an elongated skull. So this is what we're looking at. And they're on the table. Come by, and especially if you're a doctor or whatever. The foramen magnum, you can't move the occipital plate towards the foramen magnum. You'd kill the child. And yet, skull after skull after skull, this is what we see. This is the Chongo skull. I'll show you now, but it's never been seen before. What I mean by that is that most audiences, where I'm lecturing, you'll see this. But we shot this film in 2017 actually, in the Inca Museum. We were there getting DNA. And I asked the archaeologist, hey, can we see the Chongo skull? Because we want to turn it over to see where the foramen magnum is. So we go in there, and they, to my amazement, they roll, they turn the lights on. The museum was empty that day. Watch this. Oh my God, it's right in the back. It's, why? Why are you doing that to me? It really is. You can hear me go, oh my gosh, it's all the way in the back. Look at that. Oh my God. I mean, if it's any further back, it's outside the skull. It's outside the skull. It's genetic. And yet, why is it that about every 3 to 4 weeks now, I get emails from people that are on different websites. They're talking about all these elongated skulls found in Russia and elsewhere were all the result of cranial deformation, cradle headboarding. Why is that? Why are they telling us that? Why are they jamming us down the throat? Why should we believe what you say? Why? When we've got this. No one's ever seen that before. That thing, if it's any further, it's outside the skull. I couldn't believe it. Let's move on. So when we did the DNA on these groups, and they didn't like the results, we found a haplogroup H2A, which is European. We found the DNA analysis of this particular skull, basically T2B, which is Mesopotamia, Syria, and Turkey. The baby skull, which we actually unwrapped, was U2E1 that was done by 2 different labs 3 different times. Again, that's European. Why is this important? Because we're told over and over and over again that at the end of the last ice age, everybody came down from Beringia and settled the Americas. We're saying, yeah, that's true to a degree, but guess what? They came from the Middle East also and Europe, because that's what the mitochondrial DNA shows, which means it was a migration. Guess when the Paracas people show up 3,500 years ago, roughly? Guess what happened 3,500 years ago? Joshua and Caleb are pressing the conquest of the Promised Land, of the Levant, of Israel. That's what they're doing. And we believe there's a diaspora of these Nephilim tribes which just completely vacate the premises. And they hop, the island hop all through the Mediterranean. They go into, and we were there this year. They go into Spain, they go into Portugal, they go into France, they go into the UK, and they finally come over here. The whole idea of the copper trade. I mean, it's so deep, and yet it's all there, and it's all managed by people who don't want this known. Why? LA, that sounds like a conspiratologist thing. Yeah, right. Just like the UFO thing. I used to be called Mr. Tinfoil Hat. Now everybody's going, maybe LA's right about this. Same thing here. These guys just make stuff up. They just make it up. They just make it up. Why? Because anything that points back to the supernatural may, in fact, show the validity of our biblical prophetic narrative. May actually go, wow, maybe the Bible's really true. Maybe Jesus really did come. Maybe I will die in my sin unless I go before him. Whoa, what a concept. That's what salvation is. You just ask and he comes in. Anyway, let's move on. So, is there a bias in academia? You bet your booties. This guy's fired from University of Southern California, Mark Armitage. He went to a place called Hell's Creek, and he found this huge, why is it yellow? He found this huge Triceratops fossil. So he takes it back to his lab. And Mark Armitage is the microscopist. He builds scanning electron microscopes. So he gets this thing, he takes a slice, puts it into the microscope, he finds soft tissue in a fossil. That's not supposed to happen. So he writes a paper and publishes it in a secular, not a Christian thing, not a young earth thing or creationist deal, nothing like that, a secular scientific journal who are chomping at the bit to get this information. He doesn't mention anything about Christianity, doesn't mention anything about anything. This is the fact. Look what I found. He's immediately fired from his position. How dare you bring your religious prejudice into this institution, blah, 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 blah. And so what he did is he sued them, and he won. They settled out of court. Bully for him. All he did is present the facts. We did the same thing with our DNA. We were, it's all contaminated. All 58 samples are contaminated? Then if it was contaminated, surely we did our DNA, then it would show up, but it didn't show up, except for one, when we threw that out. And if it was contaminated, then we'd have nuclear DNA, but we don't have any nuclear DNA. And they never talk about the morphological, the structural differences of our skulls that we examine. They never talk about that. There is a managed agenda on this planet, a managed agenda to deliberately confuse, obfuscate, steer anybody away from anything supernatural. Because that's where the truth lies, is in the supernatural reality of the biblical narrative. So Armitage gets fired from his university, and eventually, like I already said, he settles out of court. Ben Stein's movie, if you haven't seen it spelled, go home and watch it, because he nails this thing. Anybody who goes up against the prevailing paradigm is dealt with, and dealt with severely. Why? What is the prevailing paradigm? The prevailing paradigm is Charlie Darwin, that believes that some chimpanzee or whatever, millions of years ago, he got tired of dragging his knuckles and he just decided to stand up. Just let me ask you something. Show me anything on this planet that's becoming something else. Just one example of something, a platypus that's growing an extra fin because it wants to get back into the ocean. I mean, just show me anything. They can't. And they know they can't. They know it's bogus. Why? Because the DNA is a code. And everything, what the Bible says, reproduces according to its kind. Now, that was written well in advance of Darwin. Darwin had no idea what he was getting into. But the whole idea that everything reproduces according to its time was proven by Watson and Crick, who discovered what was already there for who knows how long. The deoxyribonucleic acid, the double helix spiral of life, the building blocks of everything on this planet, the DNA. If two hummingbirds meet and they mate and they fall in love and they have babies, they're not getting kangaroos in that nest. Ain't gonna happen. We've got kangaroos at our house though. So let's move on. This is a bas relief. Well, the giants really weren't 9 feet tall. Oh, really? Then why are they doing this? Well, they just wanted to show how puny we were. No, nonsense. They were there. This is a petroglyph in the four corners of a Navajo Indian reservation, which my friend, who's a pastor, he said, oh, hey, after I listen to you, I think I know where one is. And we go out there, and sure enough, there it is, little guy, big guy. It's in their oral tradition. This is a 28.5-pound axe head. Nephilim won the book. And I'm just going to skip it to where it is. So, and the archaeologists, anything that doesn't fit is either lost and never seen again, or it's ceremonial. That's their favorite expression. Everything is ceremonial. Obviously, this axe head was ceremonial and presented to a chief to show how great he was. Chief, here's your 28.5-pound axe head, which you can't use for anything, but it's ceremonial. May the Lord be with you. I mean, it's just wacky stuff. They make it up. They have no idea where this stuff comes from. The Nephilim Lance. Bob Shelley found this. Chief Joseph Irwin, we all thought it was a sword. Chief Joseph Irwin was going, no, it's a lance. This thing's almost 3 feet long. It's made of bronze. Native Americans didn't work in bronze. Check out where we did the analysis. England, Spain, and Greece. What's it doing in Michigan in the middle of nowhere? Because according to Chief Joseph, the oral tradition, these giants that were 9, 10, 12 feet tall would come in with these huge lances, and they would spear the braves like this, lift them up, and then go through 2 others and lift up 3 braves at a time. Or they would come in and rip their heads off, pick them up like a Coke bottle and drink the blood, throw the body on the ground. Sorry for being so disgusting. That's Chief Joseph's oral tradition, which of course, well, that's just a nice bedtime story to tell your kids. Really? Okay, we got through one with 25 minutes left. I'm gonna have to talk faster. This is called Mathematics with the Mound Builders. I can't go any slower than that, Olay. And what's amazing about this, we talked about this at lunch. My daughter's here. I'm not going to embarrass her, but she's just totally cracking up. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you where she is. Hi, Corey. So everything's on an 18.5-year lunar cycle. America's Stonehenge. We filmed there for 5 days. We haven't done anything with the film yet. That's 3 are out, 4 is in the hopper, the DNA, 5 is on UFOs because we have to, 6 and 7 will be on America's Stonehenge. But America's Stonehenge is built on an 18.5-year lunar cycle. The Octagon Mount in Newark, Ohio is built on an 18.5-year lunar cycle. Stonehenge in England is built on an 18.5-year lunar cycle. Karnak, France is built on an 18.5-year, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. How did you know? And remember I talked about this earlier? How do you know, so I'm not going to belabor it, but some of you guys were in at lunch. How many people were not at lunch today? Raise your hand. Raise them up, raise them up. Yeah, so about a third of the audience. Real quickly, an 18.5-year lunar cycle. So we know the moon does this waxing and waning deal for 18.5 years. We know that, okay? How do we know that? Well, because we're told that. Well, who told them? Where does it come from? And we know that the Babylonians had it, and whoever built these sites had it. But the Native Americans didn't know about an 18.5-year lunar cycle. Europeans didn't know. But the megalithic builders knew. How do they know? Real quickly, if it's 18 years, and this whole audience, we all go out, and we get there's 2 hills in the distance that make a little valley, right? And there's a tree in front of that. We plant a stake. So we're back there. Here's our observation deck. Moon comes up, put a little notch on the stake, and we watch it go like this, and it sets over here. So we got to watch that, and we got to take the data, and we have to plot the data. And we do this for 30 days consecutively. We're doing pretty good. You know, we've got our sticks and they're all notched and we're trying to figure out, well, this is pretty cool. You know, we're going to solve this riddle anyway. And the next 5 days it rains, there's a cloud cover, we can't see the moon, now what? And when we're doing this, how would we know if we're in year 2, year 17, year 4, year 1? We wouldn't know. And then how do you crunch the data so you finally know, ha-ha, I think we're at the end of a cycle because this looks exactly like this one way over here. Okay, great. 18 and a half years. How would you know that? That's the smoking gun. On all these sites, no one is addressing it. I mean, no one is addressing it. And yet you talk to these archaeologists, yes, the site was built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. They were master astronomers. Really? The book of Enoch tells us that Sariel, a fallen angel, handed the information to mankind before the flood. And that's what I'm going with. 18 and a half year lunar cycle. You also get advanced mathematics. You get isosceles triangles. You get advanced surveying techniques. I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. Archaeological Atlas of Ohio, 10,000 mounds. That's not all of them, but that's a lot of them. 10,000 mounds in Ohio alone. The Great Circle Mound, check this out. Look how tiny the houses are. If you can, look at the trees and erase them. And realize from here that Great Circle Mound is what I'm showing you now. See down in the lower right-hand corner? That's the Great Circle Mound. Above it is the Octagon Mount. See that? And then there's Geller Hill, forming a perfect isosceles triangle. Geller Hill is what we believe was a Nephilim burial ground. So let's go back, and we'll look at this, and I'm going to fast forward it just a little bit. That's the Great Circle Mount. It has a moat in the interior of it. See the cars in the parking lot? And that plaza, which is about 30 acres, is pretty much dead level. So without transits or anything else, how do you do that? And how does a hunter-gatherer group of people create this? So this is Bruce Willis.
Todd Willis is walking
Todd
at the bottom
Willis,
of
Bruce
the moat
Willis.
of the Great
Could you turn the
Circle.
volume down? Thank you. So this is the bottom of the moat here, and this is where Todd's walking, and I just want to show you that. That's the bottom of the moat, which is essentially dead level. After thousands of years of silt falling into it, he estimated that there was 6 inches to a foot of variance between it. So for our practical purposes, for our study, we believe it was at one time, before the silt came in, it was dead level. Because if it's thousands of years old, you know stuff's going to fall in there over a period of time, leaves and debris, especially if the site is abandoned. So Willis was our surveyor, and he's blown away, absolutely blown away. But the Circle Mound, remember this here? The Circle Mound here, there's one exactly like it in England, where we just were, in Aylesbury, and that moat is out of chalk. And guess what? You can't dig chalk. You ever try to dig chalk? So this is thousands of years old, and this chalk, this moat goes down 30 feet, and they're not sure it may even go below that. And chalk is like really, really hard. So we were there, and we're just blown away by what we're seeing. But of course, archaeologists will say there's absolutely no comparison between that Circle Mound, which looks exactly like this, by the way, and the mound in Newark. Absolutely no connection, just coinkydink. Some people just, they just mind linked or something. I mean, but there's a connection because we think there was a migration of these people. There's Todd. So that's a shot of the Octagon Mount from the air. And in order to see that, we flew the drone 800 feet, and we barely caught it. And that gives you an idea what you're looking at. It's an unequal octagon. The octagon takes up, just the octagon, not the circle in front of it. The octagon takes up 50 acres. So how do you do that and make this and make it so precise if you can't see what you're making? Because you can't. Move it a little over to the left, Harry. No, left. What? There's no walkie-talkies. You're looking pretty good there, 10-4. There's no walkie-talkies 3,000 years ago. So how the heck are they doing this? Oh, they were master surveyors. Oh, really? Well, where are the surveying tools? Well, they didn't have them. They had their inner eye. That was it. I mean, it's just nonsense. They have no idea how this stuff was done. This is, volume, please. This is Dorothy Isley. And she's talking about
construction. To construct something like this requires a knowledge of geometry. It requires a
This is from the film.
Of angles, of bisecting angles, of adding angles, subtracting angles. I think there was a good knowledge of geometry that went behind the design of this.
Okay, stop. A good knowledge of geometry. Native Americans, and this is not, if you say this, oh, Marzulli's a racist. He's saying that Native Americans didn't have this. I'm not saying they didn't have it. Europeans didn't have it. That doesn't make me a racist. Just because the Italians invented the telephone, Tesla did, LA, we all know that. But, Marconi with the radio thing, right? I mean, does that mean the rest of the world is stupid? No, it just means that Marconi figured it out. It was Tesla, LA. It's Tesla, okay. You get what I'm saying? They didn't know. They did not know. They didn't work in geometry. So this is what I mean. But they have a paradigm, and they have to shoehorn all the evidence into that paradigm no matter what. Oh, they were master builders. Oh, they had surveying equipment. Oh, they knew geometry in the 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. Oh, they did one basketful at a time. It's the whole thing, when you start to deconstruct it, it just collapses of its own weight. It's absolute nonsense. But because I'm a frank supernaturalist that believes in the biblical prophetic narrative, I'm looked at, like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, and I guess most times I am. But just like the 30 years ago when I was banging on the UFO thing, and people in my church that I was going to looked at me like I had 4 heads at that point, and I was talking about the same stuff I'm talking about here, now it's on Fox News. So now what do? Newark's Advanced Mathematics Squaring the Circle. And I just want to say that, let me go back here for Dorothy.
Okay, I'm
going to go to the very end. Listen to what she says here.
That would be sufficient evidence to say the student was cheating. I see no way it happened intuitively or by chance.
So it's not by chance, it's not intuitive. So there's advanced geometry, there's advanced mathematics. I mean, I look at this and my head spins. I don't know how you do this, because, I could sit and learn it, but I don't know. I don't know. That's geometry. And again, sitting down and drawing circles in Octagon, everything has to be precise. You need to know the angle and all this stuff. And it's one thing to draw it on a piece of paper. It's another thing over 50 acres. How would you do that? And yet it's there, and it's screaming at us that's something else. Fingerprints of a supernatural? You bet. Let's move on.
No. Just like in the first show, we mentioned this.
Watch his eyes.
Who, on record, said we didn't build these things. But yet, if you go up to these areas that are under the Shawnee jurisdiction of protection, so where these mounds and things are, and it says that the Shawnee built them. So there's a false narrative that's already being put in place, even when the people themselves say it wasn't us.
Talking about the Serpent Mound.
We're not talking about...
That's Chief Joseph Riverman talking about the Serpent Mound, the signage that said that Shawnee built them. And Chief Joseph is saying, Shawnee didn't do it. The chief is saying it. Watch his face, watch his countenance.
Just 200 or 300 years ago, white settlers asking the natives, hey, who built this? And them saying, we don't know. We didn't do it. We're talking 10, 15 years ago. Modern day white settlers asking, hey, who built these? And the chief of a nation says, it wasn't us. But yet history still says, we're going to say it was you. So there's a great injustice being done there, because that's purposely being deceitful. And it's also dishonoring and disrespecting the First Nations people, and saying that our oral tradition doesn't matter if it doesn't fit the narrative of their historical paradigm.
I mean, you can't say it any clearer than that. And you can see his whole countenance changes. This is drone footage of all the mounds. This is at the end of one of the films. Turn up the volume, please. This is called the Seep Mound, and that's Fritz Zimmerman standing on it. This is a mound on private property, which we were interested in digging, but it had already been done twice, so we're not going to go. Formations that you can only see from the air. This is Fort Ancient. This is called the Graves Creek Mound. 9-foot skeletons were found here. Look at the houses. One basket full at a time, LA. A stone mound on private property in Ohio, which someone got in there with a backhoe and destroyed it, dug it all up. We don't know what he found. This is one of the circles in the Octagon Mount complex. This is called the Junction Group. Look at the houses and the cars and the road. Look at the size of the mounds, of the circles. And for the sake of time, I'm going to stop. There's only 2 more things, and I'm going to move on because I only have 12 minutes. Episode 3, Secrets of a Supernatural, Voices from the Other Side. And we're going to go. So, Fritz took us to Geller Hill. Geller Hill, we believe, is a Nephilim burial, ancient Nephilim burial site. So you can see the relationship between the Great Circle, the Octagon Mount, and Geller Hill. I realize I'm going really fast. There's a paranormal group that's with us. They called up Fritz and they go, hey, we understand you're in Newark, Ohio. We'd like to tag along with you. Can we? Fritz calls me up. I go, yeah, whatever. Just make sure we're not in the shot. I don't know anything about paranormal groups. Sounded like a fun thing, maybe. So these guys come. Here they are, Joe and Ray Lynn. And they come, and we're on Geller Hill, where allegedly burials like this were there. So it's raining, and we can't use the cameras. It's like a light mist. Can't fly a drone. So there's a forest, like 50 feet away. And it's a very nice, manicured, managed forest. And so we go in this thing, and this woman, Ray Lynn, turns on this little machine called an obelisk. I have no idea what this thing is, and it says the word evil, and you hear it, and as it you see the word. And the obelisk is a machine that's got 5,000 words embedded in it, so entities that are around can interface with this and speak to you. But I still don't know what I'm looking at till the next word pops up 50 yards down the road, which is witch. And at this point I go, okay, wait a minute. We can't do this. I know what this is. This is high-tech divination. This is a modern-day Ouija board. So I pray, and this is all on camera. It's not set up. I had no idea what it was we were about to get into, okay? But I know enough that I'm not going to sit here and watch this stuff continue. So I don't. So I just shut it down. In the name of Jesus, we forbid you to manifest. Your assignment is over. You can no longer access this machine by the blood of a lamb. So she turns it off, right? She turns it off. And then I say, well, turn it back on again. So she turns it back on, and she waits about 30 seconds, and the word holy comes up, and that's on film. She had never seen anything like it. And look at her face. She's like, what? Everyone was totally freaked out because we shut it down. I didn't shut it down. He shut it down. Amen. So what happened was they go, okay, Marzulli, you got to get out of here. You're ruining all of our machines. We can't access the ghosts and stuff. Get out, get out. So I go down to where the cars are in the parking lot. They got nothing the rest of the day. That's all on film. This is Pastor Tom Olson. He was a pastor of a Lutheran church in Newark, Ohio, okay? So he's there, and he's telling me these stories when he was hired as a pastor, and he had no idea of anything about deliverance, no idea about the mounds or the supernatural implications of the mound. He starts getting calls from parishioners, and they would go and open up the door to the crawl space in the cellar, and it would be a normal crawl space. But sometimes they would open the door, and it would be a bottomless pit. And they would throw things down in the bottomless pit, and they would never hear it end. And that's why they called him. It's like, what's going on here? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? And he's all freaked out because he's had no experience with this. So he goes and he prays over the thing and he shuts it down. One time he walked into a house that was having all sorts of crazy activity, and the table was levitating. You see, these are charged sites. They are ritualistically charged sites. And I know some people believe in it, some people don't, but they are charged sites. And we've got all this information and experienced it ourselves on these locations, which is why wherever we go, we pray up. But I got to tell you, I don't think we prayed up enough, because when we got back from 28 days on the road, we had a fatality in our group. The girl, the camera girl's grandmother, she was driving 4 or 5 days after she got back, and she was out of the blue, T-boned by a truck, and the grandmother passed away at 97. And then our guide, Francisco, son came down with acute appendicitis, had to get rushed to the hospital. Yours truly battled with acute depression for about 2 to 3 weeks. So did we pray up enough? Probably not. This stuff is sobering. So here's Gilgal Raphaim. Oops. Here's Gilgal Raphaim. I thought this was a video. If it's not, I'll just, okay. Gilgal Raphaim is in the Golan. I talked about this. You can see how small the people are. The drone's up about 200 to 250 feet. This circle might be 7,000 years old. No one really knows how old it is. And it's in the place where Og, king of Bashan, used to live. Gilgal Raphaim, the wheel of the giants, the circle of the giants. Here's another shot of the great serpent mound. You can see very plainly the serpent with its mouth agape, opening the egg. So let me ask you something. Why is it that when Henry Groover, who goes out to different places, and he's been called to do this, he does prayer walks on the land, and he takes back the sacrifices, the ritual sacrifices, the bloodshed that's been done on these sites, and consecrates it to the Lord. That's what he does. So he goes to the serpent mound, and it's snowing. He puts on a light jacket, he hops out of his van, he goes to the head of this thing, and he begins to pray. On his way back, he's hit with something visceral. Boom, he's hit in his solar plexus. Down he goes in 4 inches of snow, and guess what? The snow's coming down. And his knees are up in his chest, and he can't move. It's like he's paralyzed. And it's like, after like 10 minutes of this, he realizes that they're going to find me frozen here. They're going to find me dead here. And so he begins to pray to the Lord. Lord, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing this? The Lord finally speaks to him and goes, Henry, I didn't tell you to come in here. This is a lesson. I didn't tell you to come in here. You know, you've been on the road for 75 days. You're spiritually exhausted. You shouldn't be here. It's a lesson not only to him, but to me and to all of us who are engaged in this stuff, that the battle is very real. So the Lord healed him, released him. Henry gets back in the van, and off he goes. The bottom line is, this stuff is all too real. All too real. So why is it that Hunbat's men, the Mayan elder, and the 13 crystal skulls show up at the serpent mound? You know, what are they doing there? Why are they here in the Americas going to all these ancient sites from coast to coast? What are they doing here? What do they know that we don't? What do they know that the church is completely and utterly ignorant of? And as Gary Stearman said this afternoon or this morning, it's us. We should be the ones. We're the experts. But we're not taught this stuff, but you're being taught this stuff tonight on some level. So we're arming you. We're preparing all of us in this room to understand what's going on here. Hunbat's men comes in with 13 crystal skulls and all the Mayan elders. They do all this procession. The people who were there at the serpent mound, and it's in the film, Secrets of the Supernatural, when you get to this part, you'll hear this. But there's like 300 people doing it. What are they doing? They're opening up the gateway. They're opening up the area. They're recharging it. That's what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. Why? Because they have the power. Why? Because as shamans, in order to become a shaman, you've got to kill a family member. Who do you serve? You serve the Dark Lord. That's who you serve. That's the way it works, and that's when you get the power. Ritualistic sacrifice all through America. It's kept down. Law enforcement doesn't report it, but it's there. Ritualistic satanic sacrifice is always done because the life is in the blood. That's what's going on here. This stuff is dark. It's not meant to scare us, but it's meant to equip us. We've not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. It's us that we should, when we know what we're looking at, we know, that's the fingerprints of the supernatural. We are surrounded by it, but we're not taught it. And that we wonder why in Ohio there's such depression and poverty and drugs and everything else. There's a principality. There's a stronghold over that area, as there are in many places. The church needs to get together and come to and do this on Sunday instead of spending 8 seconds on prayer, which is about the average church spends. We need to be coalescing and targeting the abortion clinics, targeting the crack house, targeting the child trafficking, the whole deal. That's what we need to be doing. But we don't. We don't. And what does Jesus say? And take us up with him, not me. I don't want to hear it. In the latter days, they will have a form of religion, but deny its power. And that's what's going on here. Where's the power? When was the last time you saw anybody healed in your church? Just tell me when. Just tell me when. It happens. I've seen it. He's here. He loves us. It's not hopeless. But unless we come together, and this is a whole other presentation, you know, 1.8 or 1.5 billion abortions on the planet since Roe v. Wade. 1.5, that's a whole other presentation. 1.5 billion abortions. If you can sit there and think for 1 second that that has not changed the spiritual atmosphere on this planet, then come see me after class, seriously. It's changed everything, absolutely everything. And that's why we're in unprecedented times. The life is in the blood. These are ritualistically done human sacrifices to who? The Dark One. And that's why we need to stand up and we need to push back. That's why we need to start telling people. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. So why is this important? What's your takeaway? Take back control of a narrative on all these sites. Study to show yourself approved. You might not get into the depth that I am. I'm called to do this stuff. Go figure. But it validates the Native American oral tradition, which is why I think I'm being contacted by First Nation people, because they realize that I'm not the typical guy. I'm just not going to listen to their story and go, well, that's just a bunch of hooey, and walk out of the room and never see them again. I take very seriously what they tell me. More importantly than the Native American oral tradition, it validates the biblical prophetic narrative. It shows us that the giants were here, that they were real. And who are the giants? Unless we come to an understanding of Genesis 3:15 and understand what that is, that the seed of the dragon will be at war, at enmity with the seed of the woman. The seed, the offspring of the dragon, will be at enmity, at war with the seed of the woman. He, Messiah that's going to come, will crush the serpent's head, but the serpent will bruise his heel. Unless we understand Genesis 3:15, when we get to the Tower of Babel, when we get to Abraham and the 5 kings, when we finally get to Sodom and Gomorrah, when we see the conquest of Canaan, we have no idea what's going on. None. None. And there are great seminaries around here which teach that the Nephilim really weren't there. There were no such thing as giants. Go home. Then why is God destroying Sodom and Gomorrah? Then why in Jude do we hear about the angels who sin are in their, dark dungeons? Similarly, Sodom and Gomorrah, it's all there. Once we come to an understanding of Genesis 3:15, everything becomes clear. That seed, the offspring, is at war. It's a seed war, and it's going on right now. The seed war, this is the new book I'm writing. I got 21 seconds, so I can go probably about 50 seconds. This is the last slide. It establishes the reality of a supernatural worldview. It establishes the reality of a supernatural worldview. It establishes the reality of a supernatural worldview. The supernatural to me is more real than the natural world around us. And if we could see it, we'd all be just blown away. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.